everybody. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. Normally, I have a very specific topic I'd like to share with people, and hopefully most of them put some clarity around things and are inspirational, ideally, so we can keep our energies up to get through these times. This I'm going to make a little more personal, and it's on the subject of infiltration, targeting, victimhood, frauds, and fake frauds. Okay, and I bring this up because as I've been doing this for about 20 years now. And so it's natural that you're going to draw your share of critics and trolls, just like anybody else. I feel pretty fortunate that it hasn't been overwhelming. Nonetheless, there have been some pretty major events that have happened throughout my career to try to get me to step back from speaking my truth, but far more so from very, very high profile people such as David Icke, a friend of mine over the years, and someone who has really taken the brunt of targeting. And many of you know his story, but I wanted to just share with you what it looks like from my point of view. And I do not consider myself a victim in any way. I've chosen this as a profession. And so if you're going to put your head above the parapet and talk about things that are not commonly accepted by whoever the powers that be are, then you're going to make yourself a little bit vulnerable. But do keep in mind, none of us are victims. David doesn't consider himself a victim, nor myself, and I think it's a mistake to do so. This is our job. So when this first discrediting part of the journey came for me was I went out into the field doing UFO field work. This was now, I want to say 25 years ago. And there's a person who's very, very high profile in the industry who did some marvelous things within the UFO business, trying to explain and bring forward people, very credible people who needed to have their stories shared publicly in terms of having the public become more comfortable with the notion that, yes, UFOs are real. Yes, the government's involved with them. And yes, 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 on all of it. And we need to stop covering it up. So I was out on one of the little week-long field trips where you go after the sun goes down, you go out and you bring your little lawn chairs and you have a little meditation, and people are encouraged to do some remote viewing and look into the near future to see what might happen and so forth. And during the week of this trip, I was new to the group, and I was actually there as a journalist, and I'll tell you that story in a minute. But I was new to the group. And what happened is my bunny ears were working really well that week. So when we were remote viewing, a number of the things that I saw did come to pass, which sparked suspicion on the part of the primary individual. And then that turned to paranoia. And it ended up in writing a letter to the larger UFO community and stating that I was an infiltrator, a spy. I was certainly involved with one of the intelligence agencies. And for God knows what reason, I was apparently there to get some super secret information that anybody can obtain, by the way, and take him down. So in fact, what I was there for is I had spoken with the higher ups at PBS, and now this would be in the year 2000. And at that time, I already had a show on PBS, completely unrelated subject. And I had spoken to them about, let's have the courage to bring the subject of UFOs forward via hard evidence. And so I had the working title of the documentary called UFOs Hard Evidence. And I had met with PBS back in Alexandria, Virginia, and I was ready to make a go of it. And they were on board. I had a very good person that would help me distribute. I already had a reputation and shows distributed via PBS. So this was the real deal. And when the big event came, I even had the McNeil Lair crew lined up. I'd hired them to be able to film the big event. And once that letter came out and I started watching how the conspiracy community and UFO community behaved, I was absolutely appalled. And I've done a lot of stories on ufology, but the community itself was appalling in its behavior. One conspiracy sparks another, and people get all juiced up. There's something very, very sticky about feeling in the know, especially if it's something not everyone knows and is perceived to be a truth beyond a conspiracy. And that said, much of what is reported in the conspiracy community does have some basis of truth in it. Much of it. There are some that are just wacky, but a lot of it has a basis of truth and might be fully the truth. And in fact, the truth may be far worse than what a person may be revealing. So, I mean, conspiracy is just two people getting together to plan to do something. That's the technical definition of it. So, yes, there are things that happen that are right on in the conspiracy community that are being reported. And the people that have the information that goes closest to the bone against whatever their dominant agendas are, they're the ones that get targeted. So the more high profile you have, the more you're targeted. And again, I have to say, and I'm going to go into this in a little bit, if you're taking it as somehow you're a martyr and you're a victim because you put yourself in this situation, you need to get out of the business. That's not for you. And so a lot of times I'll even hear from readers who might be a little more far out, maybe not even mentally well balanced, how the government's out to get them and they're being watched for this and watched for that. And yes, in these times, it's not hard to see how people become unhinged, becoming very, not only just suspicious, but even paranoid. These are times that foster paranoia. But in these times specifically is when you and we're all called to be staying calm and centered, regardless of how crazy it is out there. So yeah, that was just my reputation, right? And fortunately, most of the people that read the letter thought, it doesn't seem like she's that kind of person. So it didn't do much harm. But it did stop a viable documentary from going on mainstream television to start introducing the subject of ufology in a very sane way via hard evidence. The nuttiness was so much, I withdrew the project and said, I'm not doing this. I don't want to be involved with them. So that's how information gets squashed. It's not because it's some kind of conspiracy to squash the information. Sometimes it's something as benign as something like what I went through. It's like they're not worth dealing with, so I'm not doing this documentary. Now, there are other times when it's a little more harmful. And one time I went to Conspiracy Con in Santa Clara with David Icke. And so that's certainly, you're going to be highly visible if you show up at any event with David Icke. But he was a friend. He was staying at my house, so we went down there together. And now that was dangerous. Fortunately, I was hearing about technologies that I did not even know existed. The kind of technologies that, and this was again, probably close to 20 years ago now, 15, 20 years ago. And so we know the technologies have gone far beyond what they were at that time. But it appears that I was gotten to, and I know exactly who did it. In fact, when she did it, I thought, I shouldn't have given that woman that information. Something's wrong with this picture. Well, something was wrong with that picture. There was a plant from probably one of the agencies, it appears, because I watched the spectrum of people she was hitting up. And each person she encountered, she changed personalities. She gave a different name, gave a different profile, history of herself in terms of career and so forth. And when I passed her in the hallway after she had already gotten to me, and I'm very accessible, she came up and threw her arms around me, not once, but twice, had this odd, quote, boyfriend standing next to her who looked like someone from a military SWAT team whose eyes were going like this and this the whole time she was talking to me. There was another sign. And anyway, I noticed when she passed me, a strange thing happened. In my mind, everything went into slow motion, and her eyes looked up under these heavy eyelids and just stared at me like, gotcha. And I thought, okay, well, sounds like she got me, but what happened? So about 24 hours later, I started having really horrible visions. And I don't have horrible visions. I don't even have bad dreams. So I know my own mind pretty well. For me, it's a fairly stable place. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing these visions of men doing incredibly violent things to other men. These were supposed to serve as threats. And I couldn't stop the visions from coming in the daytime. So after about a week and a half, I was perturbed and I thought, how do I stop this? I didn't know how to stop it. And then they started coming into my dreams. And I thought, okay, now whatever this is working with me. My guiding forces later told me you experience a very sophisticated technology that's being worked with. And we know now that, in fact, I knew at the time they had such a thing as nanodust. They can spread this nanodust if they're in close proximity to you. And again, this is old technology now that act as transmitters and receivers, and you're not even aware of it. Something like that had been, through this woman, was administered to me. And ultimately, I had a very, very dear friend who knows me well on a spiritual level. And he said, if you go into meditation, go deeply, and gave me some instructions that he was being shown, do this, and this will stop it. So I did. And I could tell you, I could do a whole show just on what happened in that meditation, but I'm not going to bore you. I did that. And in that moment, it was almost like in Wizard of Oz, where the Wicked Witch starts just shriveling up. This woman in my vision just started shriveling up. And I thought, okay, well, we'll see if that's my imagination. But the truth is, all transmissions stopped at that moment, and I was out. And I later learned that what had happened is between me and my soul and my higher self, my brain waves had been modulated to a tiny extent, just enough so that that particular frequency range wasn't in the range of transmission any longer of whoever was transmitting. And so then they started again in dream time with just horrible, scary things. And I stopped it again, and then it stopped completely. And I haven't really been subject to that kind of thing since then. And I hope you're enjoying this video, because if you are, there are dozens more like it on my site, all supported by people like you. So if you'd like to keep this work rolling in and join our community, just click on the Patreon button at reginameredith.com. That also gives you access to insider commentary, my live book club, and other live events with special guests. So join in. Thanks. I talked to David one day, and only once, and I said, "You're more targeted than anyone, David, and I've just been through this little thing, but found my way out." And he told me about what he experiences, and he said, I know when it's happening, I know when it's coming, it's just part of the game, and you just deal with it. And the fact is, that is how it is. You just deal with it. I found my way out. He finds his way out. Most people can find their way out, but sometimes, what if I hadn't? What if he hadn't? Then you start seeing other things happen. People who are high profile, who've had a good message, and you start seeing erratic behavior. Maybe you start seeing the story shift. Maybe you start seeing huge changes in personality and ego, where things start becoming distorted, and you might initially think, what was that about? Yeah, okay. And then you start seeing a pattern now of unstable behavior. And this is why I wanted to bring this up, because this happens to quite a few people that are high profile. This is the wild, wild world of internet platforms. Anybody can say what they want to say about anybody else. And you can fall for it, because there are people who are very charismatic, who are pathological liars out there. I've had this happen a few times, by the way, in terms of hit campaigns on my character and personality and so forth. And I just don't engage with it. I know who I am, and that stuff is just part of, like I said, it's part of the game. But for some people, it actually starts compromising the stability of their mind and emotions. And I bring this up because there are a few high-profile people. Some of you will have one in mind as I say this, where you think, wow, that message sure changed. Sometimes it can be that a person has been threatened or gotten to, and so this happens all the way up into any influential world of politics, of media, of entertainment. This does happen, where a person can be gotten to out of fear, can be threatened to change their stance on something. So this certainly happens at the top. We know that. And I would just say to feel a little bit of compassion for when someone goes through this, because they're probably experiencing some kind of destabilization because of an outside influence. And then there are people who show up who simply have such a massive, out of control ego, that they make statements such as, "I'm the only one that has knowledge. I'm the only one that has access. I have come to save the world." These kinds of grandiose statements, it's kind of an ego disturbance that's almost beyond my comprehension. And it actually looks like a God complex. When you start hearing people saying that they are exclusively the source of something, now this may be true. There are some times when whistleblowers come out nervously and say, I got my hands on these documents. I'm not comfortable talking about them, but I feel I must come forward. You'll watch their personality. They'll stay consistent in their story. Usually they're not a pro and not particularly charismatic, but they've just brought something forward with a good amount of hesitation and fear, even because they think the public has a right to know. Yes, okay, that does happen, and they may be the only source to that information. But there are some people with platforms who basically say, I am the way, I am the light, I am the one in the know. I'm the one with the connections. So when that starts happening, I say, run. I don't care who it is. And that has nothing to do with someone who has a good, healthy ego, who knows their value and says, you know what? This is what I believe. I've lived by it and I'm putting myself out there. Fair game. That's fair enough. Someone may have worked very hard toward an understanding of something and they're going to put it out and get as many eyeballs as they can to make a point and get something forward legitimately. But I'm hoping you're beginning just in your own memory to see the difference between someone who comes forth confidently or someone who comes forth with a piece of information that you had unique access to, and someone whose mind and emotions have become unhinged into believing they are the source, they are the savior in the situation. So, and sometimes, there are people that simply change their minds. I don't know what happened with her. I know that it was a very big deal when Doreen Virtue, who had all the beautiful angel cards and did angel card readings and, worked with St. Michael and so forth, came out and basically eschewed what she'd been doing, saying that she was now a Christian and what she had been doing was not right. And so in something like that, sometimes people just change their minds. They have a new experience. They go another direction. That happens. I don't know what's happened to her, honestly, but I know it was very disturbing to a lot of people. Was she gotten to on some level? I wouldn't think so. We're talking about angels. So highly unlikely. Did she just simply have a change of heart? Did something happen very deep in her life, for example, where she needed to do a little more introspection and she decided that she was going to turn to Christianity instead? I don't know the answer to these things, but these are all legitimate questions and these are legitimate choices on any person's part. So again, this is a very confusing world out there, very hard to determine the truth. I mean, even lately, I still have trolls and people that come by and say, "Oh, Regina's, how can you trust someone who's so Botoxed out and has so many filters on?" And I said, hey, I don't do that stuff. However, yeah, pretty low resolution on Zoom. So yeah, you get some of your wrinkles knocked down that way because women can be pretty mean about other women. And one time, one comment came through. It was hysterical because I was with Barbara Handclough at the time up at her home, and a comment had come through about how can you trust two women who have had so much surgery and Botox, and we just got hysterical. Anyway, so some of it's just funny. Some of it's just people being mean and malicious. Some of it's people seeking attention. A lot of it is people wanting to be recognized for being in the know and being intelligent and having a unique point of view. Everybody has the right to their opinion, but we're entering some even dicier times now when you start adding AI to it, falsely generated voices, falsely generated images. You can't tell what's what. And I went through this recently when I went to a concert in London, as a matter of fact. I wasn't going to talk about this. We're going off the topic a bit, but it's about illusion, fakery. And I saw the ABBA Voyage concert, which is a huge theater that's been built in London for the exclusive use of AI for this virtual show. And when I walked in, at first I doubted myself. I thought this was an AI show. And I was with my sister and my niece and a couple friends. And I leaned over to my friend. I said, "Isn't this supposed to be an AI show?" I literally thought I had misunderstood, and it was a cover band of some kind that looked identical to them. And I'm telling you, you can't tell the difference. That's the first time I've been exposed to holographic AI where I literally couldn't tell the difference. So had these complex feelings of overwhelm that I was, first of all, some fabulous ABBA music was happening and it looked like they were singing right to us. And with the knowledge that I can't tell AI from reality, nor can you, nor can anyone now. There were no beams coming down. They were walking out onto a little stage that goes perpendicular to the main stage. Say, bet you didn't think I was going to look this good after all these years. The only way you could tell is on the big blow-up close-up screens. The fine eye twitch muscles movement was a little more plastic and not as fluid on a human being. That's the only thing I could see. And so, as we know, holographic reality has been here for decades. Drumbelow warned about it after visiting a hangar in Area 51 in the 60s, that they already had it perfected. So a lot of what we're going to be contending with now are these kinds of situations where we really, truly can't tell truth from a lie, you know? So we have to have our bunny ears up. We have to have compassion for each other. People who've been out doing some of the very brave work in bringing information forward at the leading edge of its time are always more vulnerable. And so I think it's good to give them respect. And I think, as I said, in my own situation, those of us who do this, we need to just have our big girl underbritches on, as Larry the Cable Guy would say, and don't bitch about it. Don't complain. We're not victims. Yes, we're vulnerable, but we're not victims. And sometimes we need a little help from our friends if we really get in a jam to find our way out. And if we don't, and you start seeing this craziness and instability in someone you formerly loved, just send them love, but maybe, unsubscribe until things stabilize a little bit. So that's it. Just want to let you know from the inside. I'm an insider. Just want to know you to know, as someone who has had to deal with a little bit of this, that it's not fun. And when people say mean things, yeah, it hurts your feelings when people tell lies about you. And this happens. I even have this happen on a personal level. And sometimes people just feel powerless themselves, so they want to take down other people. And I think at this time in life, we need to drop that practice of gossip and being mean-spirited toward each other, and also to cut a little slack for people who are doing some of the hard work, because it ain't easy. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you might also want to consider joining Patreon, which allows me to keep all of this content free and available to everyone. And if you're looking for like-minded souls, you might also enjoy my online community called Our Neighborhood. Links to join are in the description.